Hey guys, welcome back to the Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Rieger. And finally, I have a guest again. The last few episodes, as you know, have been me solo. And I got an amazing guest in my new friend, Tami Imlay. Tami is an Air Force veteran and has just an amazing story. She lost her husband. He was killed in action in 2012, and she has been determined not to waste that pain. And the Lord has used that for her to help others find their purpose, find their calling. It was so fun when we were meeting. I met her in person. We were just she was sharing about what she is doing and how she's coaching people in that way. I'm like, man, you need to be on my show. I need to get to know you because I love what you're doing, and I'm so honored that she took time to be on with me because we talked about how to find your calling, how to find your purpose. We talked about the why you do what you do, how to dream again, all these stuff, these things that I've been talking about on this episode or on the show. And it was so fun to geek out with other people who care about this like I do, how to find what it lights you up, how to see where God has highlighted those events and things in your life to that point to your destiny, what He's calling you to do. She's a coach. She's got a podcast called The Full Weight of Joy. Go check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you want to find her website, TamiMarieCoaching.com. What an amazing lady. I just enjoyed getting to know her on this episode. And I know you're probably going to hear more from her. Here's my interview with Tami. All right, Tami, welcome to Unleashed. So good to see
Hi,
you.
thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I'm so excited.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited to hear more about your story. I know a little bit, and you become my new friend from
Yeah.
Terry Savelle Foy's team and the Echelon stuff that we're doing over there. But tell me about you. How did you get to where you are now?
Whew, man. And I've journeyed a long time, a lot of different routes to get here. A little bit about me. I'm a military brat. I grew up all over the world. I went to, I mean, elementary school in Japan. I went to middle school in Italy and high school in
No
England.
way.
When I say I traveled, I love traveling. Like it's in my blood.
Did you go to the same high
And
school all 4 years?
I did. I
Okay.
did. My dad actually stayed, it was in Lakenheath, England, and he extended his tour by 1 year in order for me to graduate, which I'm so grateful for.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. So you went from Japan, Italy, England? Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yes. There was a brief, like 8 month period where I moved to Alabama in
Okay.
there, but yeah, just 8 months.
That's
So,
wild. Okay, cool. Well,
yes.
keep going. I'm just curious. Sorry to
Yes.
stop you. I'm just curious.
No, that's okay. Yes. Well, and it's kind of been the story of my life, the shifting and changing. And I've moved every 2 to 3 years my whole life. I've done different things. When I got to college, I was like, I don't know any of these people. I don't fit in here. And I saw the men in blue. And so I joined the military myself. I became
Okay.
an Air Force officer
Wow. Thank you
and
for
I
your
did
service.
that. Yes, thank you. My high school sweetheart actually joined the military after I did because just his story was, we won't get into that. But yeah, I married my high school sweetheart. He was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. I was
Wow.
communications, and we were living the life. Like it wasn't a perfect life, but it was great. I got out of the military to start a family, and yeah, we have two amazing kids. And in 2012, he was heading to his first operational, like, war zone
Mhm.
deployment, which I have deployed. So we were like, okay, like this is just what we do.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that one of us deployed with kids. And so it was very, very different because I had two toddlers at home.
Wow.
And 2 weeks after he deployed, I got a knock on the door. I got that knock that no one wants that
Mm,
said my husband was killed in action.
mm.
And
So sorry.
completely, thank you. It was blindsided, but I look back and I realize how God prepared me for it.
Mm,
There were things, decisions that were made. There were people dropped in my life that just would make random comments that later on came back, and I was like,
wow.
I see what God was doing and how He was preparing me for this walk. Here, I thought the wilderness was going to
Mm,
be the 6 month deployment with two
oh
toddlers,
my gosh.
and it ended up being we're going on 13 years. I have a
Mm,
14 and 16-year-old now, and And yeah, that just, I knew immediately my story would be used for good. I
Mm.
knew that it was not something that was for me alone.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to be difficult, which is an understatement. It's incredibly challenging
Yeah.
to raise grieving children while you're grieving.
Yeah. And
And
your kids were
so
toddlers at the time?
they were 2 and 4, and they were just at that stage where like mom is great, but when dad comes home, that was their world. Is they loved
Yeah.
when their dad came home, and he was a fighter pilot, so he was gone often, and there'd be times that he
Mm.
would be gone before they woke up, and then they'd be asleep before he got home, and so it was definitely a special time, weekends and
Yeah.
evenings when we had daddy home.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like immediately I was like, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? Because I can't stay stuck in this world.
Hmm.
And so I did. I went on a journey and it just kind of, I allowed God to lead me. I went to counseling, and it was a terrible experience. Come to find out, a lot of grief therapy is pretty terrible, because it's not something that, I mean, well, I decided that I was like, well, you did a terrible job. So I must be, I guess that means that I need to be a therapist. And so I went to school, became a therapist because my friends were
Yeah.
like, of course this is right.
Wow.
And, and realized that in school we had a 6 week period on grief. And it was like a afterthought. It was like, oh yeah, there's grief. And so for a while I thought that was kind of what I was supposed to do, is help people
Yeah.
through grief. And in a way, life is really all about grief. Like we
Mhm.
make decisions, and we change, and we, no matter what, whether it's a loss of a person, a loss of a dream, a loss of an identity, we
Yeah.
go through these growth periods, and we are surrounded by loss. And
Yeah.
so I've
Mm.
kind of taken that into what I do now. Is I get to help people figure out who they are and what
Mm.
their purpose and calling is through like self-awareness, understanding how God wired them.
Wow.
I love it. I love helping people just see why they went through what they did,
Yeah.
and how to use it for good.
Wow. How'd you go from are you still doing any therapy?
I'm
Practicing that?
not.
Okay.
No,
How'd
so
you
I
make that
moved
jump
from.
from, because I've talked to several people who are therapists in, I don't know if, forgive me for not knowing this, but I don't know if there's like a general therapist or if they're more, more
There's different
narrow.
ways.
Okay.
There's so many, like, depending on what degree. So I was a marriage and family
Okay.
therapist. You can get, your clinical, like social working. There's a lot of
Mhm.
different paths.
Okay.
And then so yes, and then the specialties, like you can go into different specialties and get, just like coaching, you get known for something.
Love it.
Um, and
Okay, so this
so
is perfect because I didn't even, this is what I was telling you. I have no idea where this episode will go. One little nugget would be that I've talked to several folks who are therapists, but they want to expand into like online coaching and stuff. And as you know, there's a totally different, it's not the same. Like you and I could
mm-mm,
get an intern in a coaching relationship, but you're not my therapist, you're my coach. And that's completely different. And they've had a hard time thinking about how do I make that jump? And we don't have to go into all this, but how do I
sure.
tell these new clients that they're not therapy clients, they're coaching clients? And how do I draw that line? And so, was that
It
a
is.
hard thing to go from a normal professional therapist to now I'm coaching people?
So it was because it's a whole different like skill set, but then there's
Mhm.
also elements that are the same.
Yeah.
For me, it was the direction that I knew I needed to go is into coaching. I would get people to the point of health in therapy, and that's when you're supposed to release them, and it's like that's
Mm.
when the real work starts. So I
Oh,
knew,
wow.
and so the biggest thing is understanding is the therapy role is working on your past,
Yeah.
coaching is working on your future.
Oh, okay. So totally side note, you and I had a
Yes,
call earlier just talking about your business.
yes.
This is totally just between me and you, but maybe somebody else can get something out of this. One of the things I've learned in finding your audience is find the person, like the people that are in the customer's journey who
Hmm.
comes before you. And so if I was one of your coaching clients, maybe I've gone through therapy, all to say, could you network with other therapists? Because like you just said something that was powerful. Like let's say that I'm a therapist and I'm like, oh, I'm just having so much fun with this person, but I have to release them, but I'm not a coach. Could I refer them to you then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So yes, you could. And well, this is where one of those things that, like, if this is going to go out to, like, I'll just call it what it is. When I made the leap from being a therapist to a
Mhm.
coach,
Mhm.
a lot of my therapy friends basically pulled themselves away because
Okay.
in the therapy world, you are taught that if you don't have a license,
Mhm.
if you don't have a degree, then you don't know what you're doing. And
But you do know what you're doing, right? Because you have a degree.
I I do,
Yeah.
which that's the hard part is like, well, when it's actually a step down when you become a
Okay.
coach, where for me
Okay.
personally, it was not like I felt
Okay.
it was right sizing it. Like
Got
this
it.
is the direction. And
Okay.
so I'm trying to think of a PC way to say on here that it's really like you're going to have to, when you make that choice, because
Uh-huh.
a lot of therapists believe that coach, if you become a coach, is because you couldn't hack it as a therapist or you weren't willing to
Yeah.
do the work
Because
to
I
be a
can go
therapist.
online and pay $50 or $500 and get a coach license, and that's totally
Correct.
not the same as what you went through with school. I understand that.
No,
Okay.
agreed. But it doesn't, and there are like the world of coaching is so big, and there are
Yeah.
coaches who are not good at what they do. Like they don't have any frameworks, they don't
Mm,
have any background. They got some results for themselves and decided they want to teach it or they want
yeah.
to coach it. And so there's a lot of people who kind of give in, and I'm sure you've met these individuals too, who they didn't pour into their education, their coaching
Mhm.
degree. They just got that, paid the $50,
Yeah.
got their certificate,
Right.
and then are
Right.
going.
Okay.
And so that's one area with that was kind of a hard to make that transition from a therapist to a
Mm,
coach. It like I had to like, reframe a lot of it in my mind because
okay.
it was like, well, coaches are just those who can't be
Right.
therapists, and it's
Yes.
like,
Okay.
no, that's actually not it at all.
Got
Um,
it. Okay. So, or maybe there's, and again, just kind of between me and you, I wonder if there's other therapists that believe the way you do now that would gladly send their people to you after they're, quote, they're kind of
I
done
would
with
hope,
them and they see the
right.
next
I would hope
step is
so.
coaching with you.
Absolutely. And as a coach, I refer people to therapists as
Oh,
well.
cool.
And that's as we find, because that's one thing. So for me, and between like what God wanted me to do, I released my whole, like my licensing and everything. I am no longer a therapist. I say I'm a trained therapist because there's a lot of
Mhm.
education. There's a
Mhm.
lot of years and
Yeah.
thousands of hours working with clients
Yes.
that I bring into my coaching because just the understanding. But
Hmm.
I released therapy. So I'm very careful about when we touch on a subject that I know that a therapist, it would be best with a therapist. I refer them to a therapist and say, come
Yes.
back when you're ready. Or we can work simultaneously on you work on the past and let's work on where you want to
Love
go.
it. Okay.
Um,
That's perfect. So
yes,
just for you guys listening, the whole reason where I'm going with this and thinking about trying to bring this around, Tammy, to the audience and what they
yes,
like, there's Ryan, why are you asking these questions? It's that you might find a new source of leads and thinking about who you're helping and
right,
where were they before they found you. And so if I'm, let's say for example, helping people start online businesses, maybe they or get their finances straight, it might be that they went through Dave Ramsey first and now they're
sure,
ready to start a business because they're debt free and they just feel like they've gotten their house taken care of. Now they're ready to go and expand the business. If you're a business coach, you may be able to, that'd be amazing scenario, but partner with Dave Ramsey or just anybody that is working with your client before they get to you. Those are good sources of leads, partnering with those people.
absolutely. No, it would absolutely be a great place because because someone who's going to do best in coaching already knows the value of the deep work, which is
Yes.
what you do during therapy and things too.
Yeah.
And when you're ready and you come to it like an understanding and a grace for your past, but
Mhm.
you're like, that's not who I want to define me anymore, and you're ready to
Yes.
go forward. That's when it's like it does switch from you need a therapist to you actually can do you can go further with a coach than you can with a therapist
Mhm.
in that scenario. So no, I absolutely think that would be a
Yeah.
great,
Okay.
um, if you to partner with a therapist and go back and forth, because there are things
Sure.
that you touch on subjects that is like, okay,
Mm.
before we go any further, you need to like it would be beneficial to dive in with a therapist
Yeah.
or so.
Okay. You love helping people with self-awareness and their purpose, and I'm taking this all from our call earlier today.
Yes.
Um, when you're with somebody, how do you help them do that? What are some questions that you ask? What's that process you take people through to help? And maybe even somebody listening, I don't know if it's possible, but could we almost like list out some questions and pause for them to think as you're going through this? Like, what's that process for helping someone figure out how they're wired so they can be
Yes.
unleashed?
So some of the things that we do first is I am a huge fan of the Enneagram, which I know
Mhm.
in the Christian world that is a little like some people think it's taboo and others don't. I use it as a tool. It is
Mhm.
not a religion. It is not. It
Okay.
actually points people to God.
Yes.
But really understanding what your core motivations are, like why you do what you do. So that's one of the
Mm.
first things that we do is understand, and it gives us a great starting off point. Is like why what does motivate me?
Mm.
Being an Enneagram 1, I like to be in integrity. I like to do things. I like to better the world. Like obviously, like that's why what drives my impact
Mhm.
is I want everyone to be who God's called them to be. Like if they
Yes.
can get to that point, and we can, when you're shining your light, and then others can shine theirs, and the world gets really
Mhm.
bright with just
Yeah.
Jesus. Um, and so the first thing we do is like, why do you do what you do?
Mm.
Because when we understand that, we also know what's stopping us. So we
Yeah.
can identify in particular. For me, I need to, one of my fears is not getting it right. It's like it's not. I wouldn't say perfectionism. I know that there's no perfect outside of Jesus. Like I know that, but knowing it and then doing it are two different things.
Sure.
And so knowing that because I want to do it right before I even start, that's
Mhm.
going to stop me from doing a lot of things.
Mm.
So by being aware of that, I can ask myself that question of, okay, what am I afraid of right now? What is my core fear? And
Mm.
then it's like, okay, now is it true?
Yeah.
And so I love the question all the time of what are you afraid of? Like what's stopping you?
Mm.
And then asking a question of, is this true? Because a belief does not have to be true. These
Yep.
stories, these limiting beliefs we hold, scientifically, they are a thought paired with an emotion paired
Yes.
together over time. And
Yes.
so by asking if it's true, it's like, well, no, I know it doesn't need to be perfect. I know it's not even my goal to be perfect. So why am I letting
Yeah.
that stop me? And so we go through that based on what your Enneagram number is,
Okay.
because it does give you that quick win of, is this good enough for you? Is this
Yeah.
where you want to be?
Yeah.
And
How do you
so,
deal with the person who's like not sure exactly how they're wired? So like why you do what you do. So let's say for example, you're already you're doing the thing you feel called to do. What if I'm at a job that I hate, which describes
okay,
unfortunately a lot of people. They
yes,
have dreams and goals, but they're not exactly sure what it even looks like. They just know that this is not it. It's paying the bills, kind of. It's keeping me away from
right.
my family. How do you, and I know you said you work really well with a lot of guys, which that's unfortunately describes a lot of guys out there that you're just trying to feed their families but this job is not doing it for them.
Right, because well, what I've learned through through the stories, through the challenges I've been through, the impact and significance matter.
Hmm.
And so we can do a job that we're okay, we do it because we're good at it. But we don't doesn't really bring significance to us. Like
Right.
success and significance can go together, but not necessarily. And so we've
Yeah.
got to figure out. And so one of the things like by doing the Enneagram assessment,
Hmm.
that gives us like a clue because and then I also pull in like Clifton strengths as well. Like what are your strengths? What got you to that job in the first place?
Hmm.
What about that position are you good at?
Yep.
It is true. God puts us in places that we may not like because we're good at it, but then you can start looking at, okay, why am I here?
Yeah.
What parts of it do I like? Is it people? Is it? And so we'll start to dissect that a little bit
Yeah.
and see that, and then also what does that job? Because I'm not going to tell everyone, okay, well then if you don't like it, just quit because that's not even. possible.
Right.
Like we can create a plan and we can do a transition and we can find what's
Yeah.
next,
Right.
but you don't just quit and
Right.
move on. Like that's not, I don't like it. I'm not going to work tomorrow.
Unless God specifically told you to, and that might
Agreed.
be a burning bush experience.
Yes. But
Yeah.
even then, typically you've been planning it for a while
Yes. Typically.
and yes. But we'll just start dissecting that and seeing, okay, what aspects do you like? Did you have a boss that you like? Do you like leading people?
Yeah.
Do you like the logic behind it? Is it problem solving? Like we'll start to dissect it and
Hmm.
look at it because typically it's not everything that you dislike.
Right.
There's aspects of it, whether it's, soul sucking because of the people you work with, but you enjoy the work, or
Mhm.
the people you like, which is why you're staying there, you don't enjoy the work. It's like, okay, well
Right.
then what about it? And so
Yeah.
by really getting clear, asking questions about
Hmm.
like, and I love to sit and actually define things
Yeah.
because when I realized that like, yeah, we can go by Webster dictionary definition of success.
Hmm.
However, until you define success for yourself and significance for yourself and impact for yourself,
Hmm.
then you're not going to know what you're even looking for.
That's right.
And so
Mm.
it's just those simple things that we take for granted that we understand that what success looks like. Well,
Yeah.
what does it look like for you? Because if you're not, because as much as I love having money to do things, I am not money driven, which is unfortunate. I wish that I was a little bit more money driven
Right.
because things would be, but so I had to look at what is, and one of my mentors was like, well, what is your service indicator? So like, how many people are you serving, and how is that? And I was like, when I turn my significance and my success into how many people have I helped,
Yes.
whether it's, then all of a sudden that motivates me. That
Yeah.
score is what, and so by taking a step back and making some key definitions,
Yes.
you're able to see what is it you don't like about it, or what parts do you like about it, and or because again, sometimes you need to be where you are, you just don't know why. So let's figure out the
Yes. That's so good. And what you said about serving people, that I mean, hopefully turns into money unless you're doing all pro bono work. But
why. Right.
yeah,
Which,
that's good.
yeah, and
Yeah.
again, just that, believing that, like you talk a lot about it, and I know Terry does too, about the sowing the seeds,
Hmm.
and there's times that God puts you in places to serve pro
Yes.
bono or to serve,
Yes.
but it comes back to you in other ways,
Absolutely.
and so there's times, so that's where like it lit me up, and I was like, okay, well
Hmm.
then I can just start there. Like,
Hmm.
how can I serve? And so, and other people as well, I noticed that when we find what the significance is for them,
Hmm.
whether it's building something, or I have a client who he loves finishing work. So
Okay.
he will take like, and I'm like, that's what I need. I love starting things. And
Yes.
then I get ADHD and I get like, and I'm like, I need a
Yes.
finisher to just follow me around and finish all my home projects that I start. And so, but that's one thing that he loves doing. And so I
Okay.
was like, well, boom, like that right
Yeah.
there, that. And, just different aspects. We can look at like, what are some of your strengths? What are the things you love to do? And
Hmm.
how can we incorporate that in what you're doing now to find
Mm.
more significance for you?
Yes. You mentioned, oh, I don't know what this is. You mentioned on our call earlier, what has God been highlighting to you? And I'd love to dive into that because that's something I did a whole episode on that.
Okay.
Where is that in the process? So we've got why do you do what you do, the core motivation. What would be next after that?
So this is where we go through, because I truly believe that God gives you insights. He gives you like, you already know deep in your heart what you need.
Yeah.
But it's the getting quiet enough and well, just the silence, solitude, and like listening to your heart enough to hear
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
So one of the things is we go through and like, okay, so um, name some events in your life, and I will typically just say events. That way, we'll see if it's negative, positive,
Yeah.
whatever it is, whatever significant experiences you remember.
Hmm.
And then we start looking for common themes, because
Yes.
like you and I could go through the same experience, but we take different things from it because of our background, because of how
Yeah.
we're wired, because of what
Right.
God highlights. There's aspects that I will catch on to
Yeah.
that and that you will like, oh, I completely missed that. And the same thing is you will remember something, or you will catch on to something else that I'm like,
Mhm.
that is fascinating. I did not see that at all.
Yes,
And
yes.
so by going through, and I know because I this is one of the things I did for myself
Mhm.
and for my friends, I realized there's threads of things that you remember in the experiences, the good ones, the bad ones. And so that's the highlights that kind of lead
Yes.
up to this moment.
Yes, I agree 100%. I would in that episode I did, um, I was talking about the scriptures that jump out at you consistently, the uh, things that just you have interest in. Like you can totally see patterns in your life of where like I was
Yes.
interested in this and this and this, and these scriptures jump out and they give you clues. I was describing it as it's almost like there's a big, huge puzzle in front of you, and you start to
Mhm.
bring these things together, and it starts to paint a picture of where God is
Yes.
leading you based on past highlights.
Right. And if you don't get quiet and you don't start looking for them, you can miss them. And so
Yes.
that's why it's like that's the work of like, yeah, let's start diving into some of those things and find the
Yes.
common threads,
Yeah.
because you're missing out on so much gold
Mm,
by not pulling those out. Like that's the refining, through the fire of the good and the bad
mm,
and the things you go through. Like he's
yeah.
gonna leave things with you. You just get to like collect them and notice them and start to. Like, I love that idea of the metaphor of the picture, because you're right. It is. It's like putting everything
Yeah.
together, so you start to see this collective of, wow, this really is my purpose. And he's been putting people in
Yes.
my path. He's been putting challenges. He's been in circumstances. He's been putting good things, bad things. Like,
Hmm.
there's
Mm,
everything, like everything can be used for good, but you
yes.
got to see it.
Yes. I was talking in that episode, I was thinking this could actually be a workshop you take people through, and you probably already figured this out. But I'd love your advice real quick. And this is the beauty of having a podcast, by the way, is you can ask a question that seems like totally selfish. Um, Good, but I'm really curious to know your thoughts. I was thinking, how would you take all these pieces, and put it into some type of journal, or like, because another one was journal entries. If you're a
Mhm.
journaler, you can look back over and see patterns.
Mhm.
Was trying to think of an easy way to have almost like if you were going to have like a weekend retreat to help people through this process, you'd have to have them do some work before of amassing all this stuff. It almost could be like, just pictures of their journal. It could be pages they pull out. It could be, I feel like there's got to be some guided process though that you probably already figured out of how to um, get them started. Like name the
Mhm.
movies that matter to you, the music that matters to you, the scriptures that you highlight constantly or that jump out, the messages that you heard, all these journal entries. And so like one place where they could all be together where you could kind of look at all of them, almost like a puzzle. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, yeah. And so what I like to do is a timeline, like
Yeah.
go by years, and you work back from like last year to 2 years
Yeah.
ago. And then, so the first is just brain dump life experiences that you
Mhm.
remember,
Yeah.
like going back and just brain dumping, like getting them out, and then you can organize them later. And like
Yeah.
you said, the movies, the quotes, what stands out to you, and again, right, this is not a one and done. Like you
Sure.
do. And the way the brain works is you'll start it, and if you're like in the middle and you switch to something else, like your brain is still coming up with them. And so having that on, whether it's a voice memo or something that but then
Yes.
putting them all in one area,
Mm,
because unfortunately a lot of people, very few people are avid journalers,
right.
or it's kind of like journaling, it's like, when do you plant a tree? Well, the best time is 10 years ago, second best
Yes.
time is right now.
Yes.
It's never too late to
Mm,
start. But
hmm.
it definitely, we I don't have journals from, well, I have them from 10 years ago, but I don't have them from before then, before. um, but I do have my quiet time journals and
Yep.
my prayers that I've written
Yep.
out. But I like the timeline idea.
But there's
I
probably
like the
themes in your
idea.
prayers. I bet you could go back and look
Yes,
at the prayers you were praying and you can see some themes. Do you
yes.
feel like it takes I know some of this would be super personal. Um would it would it help to have somebody over like if I was doing this all by myself, not talking to anybody, Do you feel like that's sufficient to be able to see the patterns, or would it be helpful to work with somebody to say, "Hey, help me see this"?
Oh, it's always better to work with somebody. Like I'm a firm believer that it is like you can do some of the work on your own,
Hmm.
but even when I am talking with my, a coach friend or my mentor or coach, um, through conversation, things are like jogged in your mind. You're like some
Yes.
memories are jogged or some like,
Yeah,
um,
very
and
good.
and even words where someone else is like, do you hear what you just said? Like you just
Yeah.
said this and this. And that's why,
Yeah.
what I love in coaching because I do get to hear that and I get to put things, I see things
Yes.
because I'm a bystander, because I'm just listening. I see it and I can put it together faster
Yes.
than, and then all of
So
a sudden it's
true.
like, write this down and I want you to go back and think
That's
about
so
where
good.
this has shown up in your life. And so
Yes.
I do think like a workshop style and the cool thing is that you can do this and you can write it down and you can choose what to share. So you
Yep.
can, take the big things and if you start digging in deeper and there's some challenging, and again, this is also where like if it's you go through some of the history and you need a therapist like to walk through and gain some knowledge from that, you do that. You get the help you need.
Hmm.
But sometimes just identifying it and saying, okay, this is the lesson that I want to take from it is
Yeah.
good enough for to move forward. But it's always better. Like I do think that a workshop like this would be
Hmm.
phenomenal, like going through the process because our brains don't want to do this kind of work.
Right?
So it will oh, you know what? Laundry needs to be done right now. Or,
Yeah.
oh, I don't, I'll just do a 3-year plan. I won't look at 10 years ago because that's
Right.
just, I'll do that later.
Right.
And so having a set time, a set where like, okay, this is what I'm going to do beforehand. This is
Hmm.
what I'm doing after. And then, then the post work as well,
Yeah.
kind of guided I think would
So
definitely be
good.
a beneficial
Do you
thing.
have a lot of people that you work with that I feel like some of the things I've been doing, and I say this is I give people permission to dream again, especially
Yes.
like thinking about the stuff that you went through. It would be very easy for you to have had dreams that you feel like, no, God can't do that anymore because of this happening. And so to being able just to let people know that, no, that's something that God had on your heart. He knew what was going to happen, and that's still possible for you. And He still wants to make that happen. It just may not look the way you thought it was going to look. So are you doing some of that work with your clients?
I am, and because a lot of times, and for me, I'm very goal oriented, and I love making plans. And
Uh-huh.
when my husband died, like in that moment, my our plans surrounded him,
Yeah.
and so I felt like for a long time I couldn't dream because,
Yeah.
well, what was the point if
Right.
if I don't know what's going to happen anyway? And God over years like showed me how like well, without a vision, people perish. Like you need those dreams
Yeah.
and they're from him. That's the biggest thing is that he showed me is these dreams, like they may look different.
Yeah.
In fact, most of them, I have no idea. I had no idea what they were going to turn into.
Yeah.
And even just the idea of, talking on stage where you know, if you ask anybody in my past, I would do anything possible to stay away from any kind of public speaking. And over the years, like with my podcast and different things that I'm doing, I see how like God has shifted that to where it's like, no,
Yes.
I love being on stage. It still freaks me out
Yeah.
and still makes me nervous, still gets sick to my stomach, but I'm like, this is how I can do good.
Mhm.
And so that would have happened if I didn't allow myself to dream again. And so, yeah, doing that and because it's very, it's vulnerable to dream, especially when you've had so many things like taken away from you or the rug pulled out from under you
Right.
or an identity shift where it's like that, what you wanted, you don't see how that's possible anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's great looking back and you see how God did a 360,
Mm.
how, it's like all of a sudden that dream that you had, it looks different, but it's like even better.
Yes.
Job and I, like the book of Job and we went around for years because I just could not see how could he say the latter is better than the former when,
Right.
the former, like it does it. And I realized that it's God. It's
Yes.
that relationship with him
Hmm.
that makes it all better and
Yes.
those lessons that you learned. And I can say that as much as I love my late husband and I am so grateful for him, my life now, because I've been through all of that, is better. It is, you know,
Mm.
my relationship with Jesus is stronger, and my passion to do what I do and my willingness to get uncomfortable is so much
Mm.
stronger than it was back in the
Yeah.
day.
Mm.
And it's because I was able to dream and
Yes.
allow God to heal and restore my heart,
Mm.
and to push me past what I thought was capable into, you know, who
Yes.
He's called me to be.
Wow. So good.
And it's not just for me too. Like that's the biggest thing is I'm sharing my experience, but I'm not unique here. God will do this for you too, but you have to
Absolutely.
let Him.
Yeah. Wow. We could talk about so much. What when you're on stage, what are you typically saying? And when you, I know you're going to do more speaking this year. Your goal is, can I say your goal out loud?
Sure.
Okay, you
Yes,
said
go
you want to get
ahead.
on 100 stages in 2025. That's in
Yeah.
person and also like podcasts. And so, can we count this as one, or do we have to? This is 2024.
I was going to until you said that this was
No,
2024, and
no,
I
no.
was
I
like,
think
okay,
it should count because you're actually hitting
okay,
your goal early. Um,
okay. I'll count it. I'm going to add it as my number one.
99. So if you're
That's
a
right. There we
podcaster,
go.
guys, contact her.
Please.
What's your typical message? Like, obviously, we probably hit on it, but like, if I was having you come to my church and speak, what's the main message? Because I just want you to encourage the people that are listening.
The biggest thing is it's not selfish to have self awareness. It's not selfish to look inside at how God wired you.
Yeah.
And so I really talk about like some of the limiting beliefs and how we don't have to believe them. Like
Hmm.
we get to choose what we believe. And so that your thoughts, you get to create your thoughts,
Yes.
but and so that's the biggest message is understanding like we need to do the self work.
Hmm.
One of the things is by doing the self work, you're honoring God because
Yeah.
He created you. By doing this and figuring out what your core motivations are, it's then you get insight to how the creator like wants to partner with you. And
Yes.
so and so that's some of the biggest messages. We have to get out of our own way. We have to stop. We've, you know, growing up and it's like, oh, focus on other people and everything. But a lot of times and to serve,
Hmm.
we need to know what brings us joy
Yes.
because then we're serving out of our abundance instead of our lack.
Yes.
And so that's overall, there's a couple things in there. It's like
Yeah.
usually more specific, tailored to, you know, the audience and
Yeah.
what the theme of the event is. But
Yeah.
overall, it's not selfish. It's actually
Mhm.
one of the most selfless things we can do is understand the gifts that God's given us
Yeah.
and get out of our own way to use them.
Yes.
Because it's, yeah, like
Yeah.
if we can shine our light, then others can shine theirs too.
Do you feel like most people, if they get real honest, they know what they're gifted to do, or is it? I know that some people's yes, I know, but also, sorry, I'm just answering my own question, but I'm thinking, um, it's also easy to overlook it because our gifts come so easy to us
Yes.
that we think
Yes.
it's not special. Like, of course, that's not it because that's so easy, but it's not so
Mhm.
easy for other people. Have you found that to be true, where people can't read their
Oh,
own label and they're just like, that
100%.
obviously can't be the gift because that's just too easy.
Right. And how do I use that? Like that's, yeah, because we have to, it has to, we have to struggle. We have to hustle. We have to be busy. And it's like, no, actually, God doesn't want us to be busy. Like
Right?
there's so much
Yes.
in about margin and Sabbath and rest. And the other thing too is I realized that because I was hustling and I was serving in ways that I knew that it was just draining me.
Hmm.
I'm not a baby person. Like I love little babies, and but going and you know, and I worked in the nursery for years at the church because that's where it was needed. But it wasn't did not light me up. I could
Yeah.
do it,
Yeah.
but when I realized that actually mentoring, you know, the church leaders, when I, you know,
Mhm.
leading a Bible study for women, that like was way more work,
Yes.
but it brought me energy. I
Yeah.
realized that my impact can actually be magnified at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so there are some people who that, you know, rocking babies and loving on those babies, which is incredibly important, lights them up.
Yeah.
Then I was taking a spot away from them. And
Yes.
so by really understanding what you know what we actually I forgot the original question here, but that by
You're doing
understanding
great.
ourselves by understanding ourselves, we can see what lights us up.
Yes.
And typically it is something that comes easy to us, which is
Yes. Yep.
counterintuitive because we think to serve, it has to be work. I think that's it.
Right.
Talking about
Yes.
like, and it's like, well, how do you define work? Because showing up and using your gifts is work.
Yeah, I always say this too is what brings you life? What like after you do the thing, are you exhausted like you were with the babies, or are you like that was amazing? Which I imagine like after you get off of a coaching call, you're like I can't wait to get on another one. Like that just
Yes.
gives you so much life. And so guys, that's a clue. Like if you're doing something that is totally draining, that's probably not your thing. It needs to
Right.
be something that you like just love to do. You do it for free, even if you had to.
Yes.
And that's the thing that's going to bring you the income too. It's just because it's going to just come easy for me. Not again, it's not, it's work, but
It's work.
but it's
Yes.
life giving to you. You just know you're in your zone. Like you mentioned earlier on our call, you help people find their zone of genius. And that's just
Yes.
where you feel like I could do this all day long. I could do this work all day
Yeah.
long.
And the crazy part is if you figure out what your zone of genius is, and I figure out what mine is, and we can it magnifies our ripple effects.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, because typically, this is why I love Clifton Strengths Finder because we focus on your strengths because your strengths are someone else's weaknesses. So if
Mm,
you focus on your strengths, it actually covers their weakness as well.
that's
And the
good.
same is opposite of your weaknesses are someone else's strengths. And
Yes.
so when you partner together, you actually elevate and magnify your strengths
That's so
versus
good.
we're taught to like see our weaknesses and
Hmm.
try to make those better. It's like
Like
no,
no, no, no,
find the
no.
who. Like
Right.
like it is. It's find the who has a strengths where you're weak.
Yes.
I
That's
like
so good.
weaknesses. Those are kind of our thorn in the side that reminds us that we do need others and we
Mhm.
need God puts them there because we're not supposed to be good at everything. We need Him
Right.
to be good at everything.
Oh, that's so
And
good.
so but He usually will partner you with somebody
Hmm.
who can make up for the weakness. And if you just pour into your strength, you learn about that and again, even if you're good at it, learn more about it. Like go all in
Oh
on
yeah.
those. And then it just even more magnifies it like, you know,
Yes.
exponentially magnifies your impact.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, how can people find you, like your podcast and your coaching and all that?
So my podcast is called The Full Weight of Joy. And you can find me on everywhere podcasts are. And then my LinkedIn is actually the best place to come and meet me. And it's just Tami Imlay, so TamiImlay.
Got it.
And yeah, I love connecting. I would love to, if you have any questions or just want to, if any of this lights you up and you just want to talk about it, I would love to
Yes.
just connect as well. So that, but that's the
Awesome.
best way. And then TamiMarieCoaching.com is my website.
I'll put this in the show notes.
Thank you.
Tami.com. Tami, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it very much. You are
Yeah,
welcome
this is
back anytime. I know you're launching a
great.
course soon, so let me know when that's about to launch, and maybe we'll have you back.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much. And I'd love to have
Welcome.
you on my podcast too.
All
So
right, cool.
we'll
Let's do it.
have that then.
All
Yeah.
right, thanks.